The year was 1347, and Europe was on the brink of a disaster unlike anything the world had ever seen. Across the continent, life seemed normal. Merchants traveled busy trade routes, farmers worked their fields, and cities bustled with activity. But hidden within merchant ships arriving from distant lands was an invisible enemy that would soon change history forever. The disease first arrived in European ports aboard trading vessels from the east. Sailors who had survived long journeys began falling ill with strange symptoms. High fevers, weakness, and painful black swellings appeared on their bodies. Many died within days. At first, people believed it was a local sickness that would quickly disappear. They were terribly wrong. As infected ships docked in port cities, rats carrying disease-infected fleas spread throughout towns and villages. Within weeks, entire neighborhoods were overwhelmed by illness. The disease moved with terrifying speed, traveling along trade routes and reaching new regions before anyone understood what was happening. Fear soon spread faster than the plague itself. Families watched helplessly as loved ones became sick. Victims often developed fever, chills, headaches, and swollen lumps known as buboes. These painful swellings appeared in the neck, armpits, and groin. The disease attacked quickly, and many who showed symptoms in the morning were dead by nightfall. In crowded cities, the situation became horrifying. Church bells rang constantly as funeral processions filled the streets. Graveyards quickly ran out of space. In some places, mass graves were dug to bury the dead. The smell of sickness and death lingered everywhere. People searched desperately for answers. Doctors were powerless against the plague. Medical knowledge at the time was limited, and many treatments made patients even worse. Some physicians burned herbs or carried flowers, believing pleasant smells could protect them from disease. Others wore long-beaked masks filled with aromatic plants. Nothing seemed to stop the plague. Rumors and superstitions flourished. Some believed the disease was a punishment from God. Others blamed poisoned wells, evil spirits, or strange alignments of the planets. Fear drove communities into panic. Innocent people were sometimes accused of causing the plague and became victims of violence. As months turned into years, the Black Death swept across Europe like a dark storm. Entire villages disappeared from maps. Fields were abandoned because there were no farmers left to work them. Livestock wandered unattended. Roads became empty as travelers avoided infected areas. The social fabric of Europe began to unravel. Many wealthy citizens fled cities in hopes of escaping the disease. Some isolated themselves in country estates, refusing contact with outsiders. Yet even the rich often found that wealth could not protect them. The plague reached castles, monasteries, and royal courts alike. Monasteries suffered especially heavy losses. Monks and nuns cared for the sick, placing themselves directly in harm's way. Many paid for their compassion with their lives. Priests who performed last rites often became infected themselves. Despite the overwhelming tragedy, acts of courage could still be found. Neighbors risked their lives to care for one another. Some doctors continued treating patients even when they knew the danger. Families remained by the bedside of loved ones, offering comfort during their final moments. By the early 1350s, the plague had claimed millions of lives. Historians estimate that between 1/3 and 1/2 of Europe's population perished. No previous epidemic in European history had caused destruction on such a scale. Yet the Black Death did more than kill. It transformed society. With so many workers gone, labor became scarce. Survivors suddenly found their skills in high demand. Peasants who had once been tied to landowners gained greater bargaining power. Wages increased in many regions, and old social structures began to weaken. The catastrophe also changed how people viewed medicine, religion, and authority. Communities questioned long-held beliefs as they struggled to understand why the disaster had occurred. Over time, these changes contributed to major social and economic transformations across Europe. Although the worst wave eventually passed, the plague did not disappear completely. Outbreaks continued to return for centuries, reminding people of the terror they had endured. Stories of the Black Death were passed down through generations, becoming part of Europe's collective memory. Today, modern science has revealed that the Black Death was largely caused by a bacterium called Yersinia pestis, spread primarily through fleas carried by rats. What was once an incomprehensible nightmare can now be understood through medicine and history. Yet the memory of the Black Death remains powerful. It stands as a reminder of how vulnerable humanity can be in the face of disease. It is a story of fear, suffering, resilience, and survival. Millions perished, entire communities vanished, and the course of history was forever altered. More than 6 centuries later, the Black Death is still remembered as Europe's darkest nightmare, a catastrophe that reshaped a continent and left an unforgettable mark on human history.